Hello, Internet people, and welcome to, what did we decide to call it again?
Comic News with AlphaRookie.
Comic News with AlphaRookie. This is Kyle's idea. Quick 5-minute sized What I meant to say is that it's something you can listen to in a very short amount of time and hopefully get some information. Short, compact, still sounds like I'm making metaphors instead of just talking about the video. So this is just gonna be a quick short rundown of not necessarily any news item in particular, depends on what it is. Today it's gonna be DC Black Label. So if you haven't heard, Hollywood Reporter announced that, well, they broke the story that DC's we got a new imprint coming at you. We don't have enough, here's a new one. This one is called Black Label. It's a mature reader's imprint. You might be asking yourself, isn't that kind of what Vertigo is? Yeah, I guess we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So if you don't know anything about this, DC is like, hey, we have a long celebrated history of high profile creators doing outside of continuity stories that have a long-standing impact on comics. So think like The Dark Knight Returns, or Killing Joke, or All-Star Superman, or, you know, the list goes on and on. It actually, admittedly, even to Marvel fans that I talk to, it makes DC a much more approachable publisher for new readers. Because Marvel, it's not that it doesn't exist, but it is a little harder to go over there and point and say, that's a book you can just pick up and read about that character. They don't have as much of that. Marvel's a lot more interested in maintaining their continuity. Everything is a living, breathing organism that is continued from, you know, before World War II. DC, on the other hand, has a bunch of this stuff. Like Batman has 10 million things. You can read Long Halloween, you know, whatever. Anyway, so DC is like, yeah, we're gonna do that. We've been doing that a long time. We're gonna do that too. It's a little bit weird because they kind of have been, they never stopped doing that. They've kind of always, there's been the Earth 1 series. There's been, even right now, currently, there's a book coming out called Mr. Miracle. I guess it's technically in continuity in some fashion, but it seems like it's its own thing. It's awesome. You can read it without having to read any of the other DC books on the stands. That one's by Tom King and Mitch Gerads? Sorry, don't know how to say your name. But there is some stuff about this that's pretty interesting. I think probably the most important thing is that in addition to all that, like high profile creators, and they are high profile creators if some of them are kind of already like in-house at DC anyway, and letting them kind of do their own thing, you know, if they want to do something that's more mature than they can do in their regular comic book, that's cool. I think the exciting thing, or what makes it a little bit different than their other imprints, is that the format is not regulated. So what that means is essentially an editor or DC, you know, the company is going to decide how long a comic book is going to be, what kind of format it's going to come out in. Is it going to come out as an original graphic novel? Is it going to come out as a 22-page comic book? Is it going to come out as a 66-page comic book or something? And that's kind of determined by the publisher, and then, you know, the writer and artist will do that, or they might have some input, but like ultimately the final say is going to be them. This sounds like the actual creative team is going to have the say when it comes to the format. That's kind of important. There's a lot of stories that creators might want to tell that lend themselves well to a particular kind of pacing and a particular kind of format. It's something that might not be very good serialized. It's a story that would be good to read in like one sitting, and so they might take a longer time on it, and they want to release it as just like an original graphic novel that you can pick up and you can read and you can finish the whole story in one sitting. Kind of like I Kill Giants, which I actually did a video on that I'm kind of proud of, and there's a movie coming out of that soon, and so go check that out. So Warren Ellis, for example, one of my favorite writers, he's been doing some really interesting work, some of the most interesting work of his career, but the stuff that he's been doing is, I think, very influenced by the time he's been spending writing novels. So his stuff is good, it reads better in trades. And so by like the third issue, people are kind of like, I don't know where the story is going, and they kind of start falling off of it. But what you should consider doing, other people have done already, where the first issue that comes out and it's long. Like the first issue will come out and it's almost the size of 3 issues. So what happens with that is that your brain, even if it has to wait a little bit longer to read the rest of it, you will remember more of it. You'll retain more of it. It would be like, it's kind of like when TV shows have a longer pilot before you watch the rest of the series. So it's exciting to see some experimentation with format, because I think that's one of the things that's holding it back, is that everything needs to be a 22-page comic book that comes out every month. There's a lot of limitations that go along with that. Okay, I talked a lot about format. Let's talk about the books that are coming out. So the whole thing kicks off in August, and it's going to start with a Superman book by Frank Miller. So it's going to be Frank Miller, but he's not drawing it because he's getting old, and I don't think his hands move as good anymore. It's going to be drawn by John Romita Jr. I really like John Romita Jr. John Romita Jr., obviously the, in my opinion, very talented artist of his father, who was a very popular Spider-Man artist, among other things. Not everybody loves John Romita Jr. John Romita Jr. has kind of a Frank Miller style, which they've worked together before. Of course, they did Daredevil. Oh God, what am I doing? Come on, Ryan. You know books. Books are about things. Man Without Fear. Which was kind of a retelling of the Daredevil origin. Anyway, clearly, John Romita Jr.'s influenced by Frank Miller's style to some extent. All right, so everybody's going, oh God, don't let Frank Miller have a Superman book, because Frank Miller is almost single-handedly responsible for making Superman seem like a bad guy and like a dick. And this goes back to The Dark Knight Returns, and of course pitting those two characters against each other and kind of making Superman somewhat of a antagonist in that book. But I think, and who knows, we won't know until it comes out, but this is titled Superman Year One. I don't think it's going to be Superman Year One, see how much of a dick he was when he was a kid. I think that this is probably going to be Frank Miller's attempt to change your mind that he hates Superman or something. I think that he's going to try to give Superman his due, but we'll see. I have no idea. That one's also going to be only 3 issues, so that's kind of exciting. That doesn't happen very often. I love 3-issue miniseries. If you've never read We 3 by Grant Morrison and Frank Quiley about cyborg pet cat, dog, and rabbit that go homeward bound with cyborgs and violence. Fantastic series. Only 3 issues. Gets in, gets out, tells the story. It's beautiful. Okay, so these are the other ones they have on their docket. They got another Batman one because Batman's Batman. Batman sells. This one's called Batman: Damned. Sounds like fun. This one's going to be written by Brian Azzarello and drawn by Lee Bermejo. Brian Azzarello has a long history with Batman. He's done lots of stuff with the character. Brian Azzarello is obviously known for doing a lot of gritty crime stuff. Probably his big book that he's always going to be known for is 100 Bullets. 100 Bullets is fantastic. I guess we should do a video on it at some point or another. Very pulpy, very Tarantino-esque. His dialogue's very stylish, very pulpy. Everything's double entendres. And he's worked with Lee Bermejo before. Probably the work that's most going to preview what they're going to do with Batman this time is a book they did called Joker, which is another good example of this is not new territory for DC. Joker was an original graphic novel that just came out in a book. This is a story that you could go home and read. And it was a gritty crime story starring the Joker. So we'll see what Batman Damned is all about. We also have Wonder Woman Historia, the Amazons. A little bit of a mouthful. This one's being written by Kelly Sue DeConnick and drawn by Phil Jimenez. Phil Jimenez is a very popular artist. He's done a lot of stuff with DC. He has a lot of work associated with Wonder Woman. So the big thing here probably is Kelly Sue DeConnick. She hasn't been working very much, not because nobody wants her to or anything like that. I wouldn't be able to tell you what's going on with her life. I know that her and Matt Fraction had like a first look deal with Universal Studios or something like that, and if I had to guess without knowing anything about her or what's going on in her life, she's been busy maybe doing Hollywood stuff. The book that she's had coming out has been Bitch Planet, but it's come out pretty inconsistently. So this is kind of a big deal for her to come on, especially onto a superhero book. She was at Marvel for a long time, and then she kind of quite famously left Marvel. Had reasons of her own. She popularized Captain Marvel. Not that she wasn't popular before, but she definitely revamped her, put her in a new costume. Probably one of the big reasons you're seeing a Captain Marvel movie from Marvel very soon. Anyway, so she's back to do Wonder Woman. That's going to be a very big deal for it's going to be a big deal for everybody, but that'll be a big deal for female readers. Kelly Sue DeConnick's probably the most high-profile female writer now. So to get her on the highest-profile super heroine title is going to be a big deal. We also got Can't keep away Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo together. These guys, if you don't already know them, they had the best-selling book all throughout the entire tenure of DC's New 52 while they were on Batman together. Greg Capullo's awesome. He's got a very cool animated style. He did a lot of stuff with Todd McFarlane when he was, because he had a style somewhat like Todd McFarlane, worked on Spawn. Jumped over to Batman, did a career-defining work on Batman with Scott Snyder. They've been recently working together on DC's insane, crazy event book, Dark Knight's Metal, which is about to wrap up. So these guys are a winning team. Their books always sell. Put them together on another Batman book. This one's called Batman Last Night on Earth. Kind of sounds sort of like a post-apocalyptic Batman in the future kind of thing. So I'm sure that's going to do really well. We got a couple other ones, not as many details. There's another Wonder Woman book called Diana's Daughter, Wonder Woman Diana's Daughter. This one's written by Greg Rucka. It's another slam dunk. Greg Rucka is a fan favorite with the character. He actually has just recently returned to the character after a very long time. He left DC under not good circumstances, and kind of everybody never expected him to come back and work for DC again, but everything comes back around eventually, and he did come back and work for DC, did some Wonder Woman stuff, so it's cool to see him continue to do some more Wonder Woman stuff. No artist on that book yet. And this last one might, it's easy to miss. It's called The Other History of the DC Universe, and this one's really interesting. So this one's being written by John Ridley, who, if you're not familiar with him, not a whole lot of comic book stuff, but he screenwriter. He won an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for 12 Years a Slave. So he's doing, what he's going to be doing basically is the DC version of The People's History of the United States. If you're not aware of that book, if you ever saw Good Will Hunting, that was kind of one of the books Matt Damon used. He says oh, you should read that book, that'll blow your effing mind, when he's talking to Robin Williams. It's sort of it's a history book written from the indigenous people's point of view, so by Howard Zinn, right? So here's Christopher Columbus, but here's Christopher Columbus not from his perspective, like in the history books most of the time, but from the perspective of the indigenous peoples of the islands. Didn't go too well. So that's kind of what he's doing, but for the DC Universe, maybe not that extreme. I don't know if that's a bad analogy, but essentially this guy's going to be doing a comic book that is a lot of the major DC events throughout the years, but from minority characters' points of view, not just random, but like actual characters. So think Vixen, or maybe Steel, the Black Superman character, or Black Lightning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that should be really interesting. I'm sure that's going to get the trolls all mixed up and not enjoy that at all, and call people SJWs and cucks and whatnot. But that should be really interesting. Okay, so I don't know. Hopefully that was that was interesting. If you'd already had that news, maybe you enjoyed my opinion. If not, maybe you're a little bit more informed. This is kind of a new thing that we're doing, so if you liked it, let us know in the comments. If you think there's something I could change, or some kind of recommendation, let us know about that too.
Don't suck as much.
Don't suck as much. That's fine. Constructive criticism, sure. Anyway, all right. See you next time.